All right, I'll go ahead and get the meeting started, call to order. I think everyone, we've got a couple online or doing virtually, and then Mr. Reeves is here also. Is there any public comment that would like to speak? Okay, please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Charlotte, and our address is the Home 2 Suites at 8041 Lavelle Way.
Okay.
So, I am with North Florida Hotels. We have 3 hotels on Pine Forest and I-10 for a total of 218 rooms, and we have over 150 employees. Our total assets value at $25 million, and we are family-owned and operated. I represent our hotels located at the Pine Forest area. Our group has averaged a new hotel every 3 years and looks forward to continued growth in Greater Escambia County. Country Inn & Suites opened in 2008, Hampton Inn opened in 2014, and we just opened our Home 2 March of 2020. I represent our hotels along with a group of hoteliers in town that account for over 70% of all hotels in Escambia County, and none of us were notified on the new about any discussion that the 5-cent tax was getting to be voted on in the December 10th, 2019 meeting. We and every hotelier from Pensacola Beach to northern Escambia County has the right to know what our TDC will be discussing and should be allowed to give any input before items are voted on by the Tourist Development Council. Market studies are indicating our occupancy level will not return to pre-COVID percentages until 2023. Marketing dollars and proper representation of Visit Pensacola funds should be only focused on hospitality and travel tourism needs. I would like to suggest that a subcommittee is formed consisting of hoteliers only to assist TDC in reinvesting back into the Escambia County tourism, not infrastructure or anything else that does not directly increase heads and beds for Escambia County. By increasing heads and beds, we can get a better return that will create more revenue for LOST funds, which can be used towards the infrastructure or anything else that the people of Escambia County need. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Appreciate it. Okay. And we will consider your request. Another? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Darpin Patel. Address is 5 North New Orleans Road. I represent 4 hotels in Escambia County, the group of hotels in town that account for 70% of all hotels in Escambia County. Not all of us were aware of this meeting or the potential of the 5th cent being forwarded. The discussion, the 5th cent was going to be voted upon on December 10th, 2019 meeting, and that as a stockholder, I and every hotelier from Pensacola Beach to northern Escambia County has a right to know what our TDC will be discussing and should be allowed to give any and all inputs before items are voted upon by the Tourist Development Council. And that only items on the agenda should be voted upon per procedure, I'm assuming. I would like to suggest that a subcommittee is formed consisting of hoteliers only to assist the TDC in reinvesting back into Escambia County tourism, not infrastructure or anything else that does not directly create heads and beds. By increasing heads and beds, Escambia County, in return, that will create more revenue for LOST or LOST funds, which can be used towards infrastructure or anything else that the people of Escambia County needs and wants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, great. Thank you for those comments. We'll move to item 3, the approval of the June minutes. Everyone was sent the June minutes, and I hope you've had an opportunity to review them.
Motion to approve. Second.
All right. Any changes to the minutes? Okay. No. All approve, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Great.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes,
I just want to let you know that there was a name that was incorrect in the minutes,
and
that was-
that's in the August.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and yes, thank you, Janice.
Okay.
I've got that correction. Okay, now for the approval of the August minutes, there is, as Janice was just saying, we do have a name correction. It is on the page 3, where Commissioner Bender said that the BOCC is taking, in its paragraph 2, BOCC is taking a cut. We requested that Sharon Pitts, but actually that was Sharon Harrell that spoke with us. Sharon Pitts is Janice's assistant. So there is a correction to that, those minutes. Okay?
Except with the amendment to it, yeah.
Second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any discussion? Great, all right. Next, the status of funds available. The Office of Management and Budget. Pam?
Pam Childers, Clerk and Comptroller for Escambia County. I'm actually going to take the first step. And let me tell you why I'm taking the first step. As you know, there has not been leadership in Office of Management and Budget when Stefan and Amy left. Amber is now on board. So as we transition through, you'll probably see more Amber and less of me. But it is my office that accounts for all of your tourist development tax collections reports. So I don't mind staying involved. So I've got a few things that I want to share with you that I emailed through Zanani to you. And I would like to start with a meeting I had with Mr. Reeves and go through a report that we talked about. I won't go in length, and you won't offend me if you say speed it up or slow it down or ask questions. I have Mike Davis with me. He is a CPA. He is the manager over my Treasury Department, which is TDT. So you will see emails and reports from him. So we'll just get started with the document that looks like this.
Okay, where is,
For any of you, it was emailed to you. You all were emailing it out.
oh, blue folder. Okay, great.
folder.
All right,
This is a document that we updated, created for a meeting with Mr. Reeves on the 26th of August. The first page is going to talk to you about revenues and expenditures
okay.
through August 26th. You have the 1 through 3, what it generates. The next is the 4th. At that point in time, we are at collections of $7.6 million. We had $100,000 in interest. And then if you look at the expenditures broken down in summary, we titled it so you could better understand what is 1 through 3 cent, which is in your plan, and what is spent out of the 4 cent, which is not in your plan. But nonetheless, Fund 108 accounts for all of the TDT revenues. So that was meant for you to just read it, digest it. You've got some facts and figures. The next page talks to you about collections. I gave you prior year all
Pam,
the way back.
I have
Sir.
a quick question, just so that I understand this page. The previous years, is that, well, first of all, what is the date? Is this through August 26th, those numbers
Yeah,
you're
at
showing?
the top, it says through August 26th.
Okay, and so the previous years are also through August 26th or full years?
Well, they're prior
So
fiscal years.
full
Okay.
fiscal year, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good question. Fiscal year to fiscal year, okay? I do want to stop for 1 minute. I put on the dais something that looks like this,
Okay,
something that looks like this, and it is updating this next page for you, or this page, however you want to look at it, because it's going to tell you what collections are through August. Okay? Some of you have a question of, where are we for August? I believe it was 1.8. 1.8 is what we collected. So this was as of 8/26, and I gave you an update just so
Okay.
you could see it. okay?
8:31.
So if you would like to look back as to what revenue collections looked like from 2013 forward, that's your look back. Okay? Next page of the Jim Reeves report. This was a cash reconciliation done so you understood where we were with cash available. So we started the year with 6.7 million. Visit Pensacola still had payables of 1.4. So 5.3 would be our technical fund balance or cash to pay bills. We started with revenues, you can see it, October through 8/26 or 8/25, whatever the dates were, it changes a little bit. Those are the same expenditures on that first page. So that told you where we were with current cash available on 8/26. Okay? Next page, a little bit more information for you, and this is a cash projection. Starts off with the cash available, the 4.4. It tells you that we have remaining months to collect. So we knew we'd get about $1 million in August, maybe expect about 800,000. The handout that I gave you showed you we collected 1.8. So on 8/26, we had about 662,000 we collected. We've collected another million one. Okay, so that number in our estimate is a little low, just by a fraction. We expect in September we'll collect about 800,000. We normally collect close to $1 million. Now, remaining expenditures. August, at the time that I talked with you, Mr. Reeves, we had only collected 662,000. Since then, the big hoteliers usually will mail in a check. They don't wire it to me by midnight. They mail in a check. Some of them have not even paid yet. They are still due and owing us money, but that's where we're at.
So instead of 1 million, what is all?
1.8. So on your August 26th report, I told you it was 662. So with $1 million collections, so we would be at $1.6 million when I talk to you. The final is $1.8 million. Okay? Remaining expenditures. Visit Pensacola has a remaining PO. They still have $1 million worth of options to spend out that PO. The Bob Sykes rehab, which comes through the BCC money, the mowing, the 4-cent beach access, the water quality. This is what's telling you that we have remaining outstanding contracts that will probably pay out by September 30th. So we called that an absolute. So that gives us cash available at 4.3. Next is the reserves.
Childers?
Sir.
So the county anticipates paying out the 225,000, roughly 225 for Beach Access 4. It'll be prepared by,
They do.
September?
There's a few things that are, I made it an absolute because I knew it was a contract. It may not pay totally out.
okay. I mean, I understand it's encumbered, but I didn't know
Yes.
whether it would be paid.
Ms. Gilly can talk to that if you'd like to talk with her about that.
Okay.
But I made the assumption if you had it under contract, the plan was to spend, that you'll spend it.
Okay.
Okay, reserves. Understanding reserves, yet I have a handout for you that'll show you reserves. But the fund, and I say the fund has reserves of 1.1 million. The fund is the county-owned fund. It is Fund 108. That is the amount of money that's set in reserves for the fund. The BCC reserves, you see that it's going in the opposite sign, it's positive. It's actually $7,000 kind of overspent. Mr. Bender got a vote from the BCC board to release 500,000, and this was just a math. So 500,000 went back to general funds, so to speak. The 4 cent, this is a BCC reserve of 4 cent of 111. So if you take that cash reserves out, we're starting the fiscal year with about 3 million. Visit Pensacola contract, prior contract, not current contract, but as written, always starts with a $2 million upfront payment. So if you look, projected cash available is about $1 million. I would never, ever want to go any lower than that. In fact, it's my position as comptroller that I think there needs to be more reserves. And if I were taking one step further, I don't think you need to give $2 million upfront to Visit Pensacola. I think that can be structured differently, but that's up to
Madam
you.
Clerk.
I have a question. On these reserves, the BCC 1.3 and the BCC 4.
Yes.
Help me understand what those are.
1 through 3 is cents. Cent 1 through 3 has $7,000 in a math, kind of a rounding or a calculation.
Okay.
They had 493,000 available in their reserves. Mr. Bender got a vote from the dais
And I was
for
going to clarify,
500.
that was the 500,000 that we gave to Visit for marketing for the,
Yes.
yes.
The fourth cent, which is not in your plan, it's not what you vote on, it's not under your control, they have 111,000 still set aside in reserves for the 4 cent. Okay? All right, so that's that page.
And then, do we add a 1.2 to that? If the top estimate was 662, but actuals were 1.8?
You would add August deposits to be allocated, and that just means broken up between a 1 through 3 cent and the 4 cent is 662. I estimated that we'd collect $1 million, so I was already accounting for $1,662,000.
Okay.
Your actual collections are $1,008,000 something.
Okay,
Okay, so not that big of a swing.
right, at 170,000 or so.
Next page. This is a quick budget workshop page, worksheet, just something I thought you might find interesting for the fiscal '21. Mr. Reeves in that meeting wanted to talk about the upcoming budget. So it's based on, if you look at your revenues, it's based on the 2016 year, fiscal year. The 200,000 that you see from fund balance, it's just a plug because we're trying to get to the 10.1. If you look down the breakdown where it says what the county is going to spend, so of the 1 through 3 cent, the county's going to spend money on Bay Center. 1 through 3, the county's going to spend money on mowing and Bob Sykes. It also has a reserve for projects of $1.3 million. Let me explain the $1.3 million. Years past, there was a bond issue. There's some history to that bond issue, but there was a bond issue and it was paid out of TDT funds. That bond issue is paid off. The Board of County Commissioners made a decision, a vote at that time, to take the 1.3 and set it aside for projects. And it's on the agenda to do the same thing this year. That's what that's for. 4 cent, again, you have no control, but this is giving you a full look at TDT revenues. 4 cent marine resources. The next is the county administrative costs that's allowed by statute, and a statute holdback of 5% that's required also. So that brings you down to what the county administration is setting aside out of the TDT revenues. Go to the next block.
So where is the 499,776?
that's held back.
Where is it? Well, first of all, this is a budget, and it's based on if you collect 10 million, it will stay in the fund. Not to Visit Pensacola, it'll stay in the fund.
Does the fund mean reserves, or?
The fund as a whole is reserved. It's restricted by statute.
Is
And then you have a further restriction through your reserves.
that the same fund that was on the previous page, Fund 108?
Correct. Everything is in Fund 108.
So that 1.2 million or so is from
Again,
previous
this is
years?
budget. This is kind of funny money.
Right.
This isn't real.
But the previous page showed Reserve Fund 10, I think you said 108 is what it's called, 1,168,000. Is that
Correct.
from previous years?
That's how it accumulates. Whenever there's monies unspent or unencumbered, they accumulate to a reserve.
Okay.
Okay.
What penny does unified budget come out of generally?
Excuse me, what?
Which penny does unified budget, so when we
1
talk
through
about
3.
ACE and we talk about Visit, where does that?
1 through 3.
1 through 3, okay.
1 through
I didn't see
3
it
is
on
in
here.
your
I just see,
plan.
I see the Bay Center
But,
and
so-
mowing. I see, okay, thank you.
Yeah, Madam Clerk, sorry.
Yeah.
So the county administrative costs, that, I believe it used to be higher, that we rolled that back a little bit.
Used to be higher.
It used to be
I've
5%,
seen-
I think, and we took it down to
Yes.
3%.
Percentage rise, yes,
Yeah.
and then there are times they didn't take all of that. It's kind of a moving number, but
And the-
yes, it is a 3%.
And then the statutory
required by
holdback
statute.
is just saying that we can't budget 100% of what our expected revenues are. So just like, this year took it to the extreme, but had we only not collected a portion of what we were expecting, then that statutory holdback covers that shortfall of revenue. So that's the statutory holdback.
Yes, sir, that's
So it's not
exactly
actual
correct.
money.
But the number's
Put into it.
based on the 10 million.
Numbers based on the 10 million, the statute says that we can only essentially budget 95% of the budget. And then I think the other thing is though, that the visit does get a portion of the unified budget out of the 4th cent.
I missed all that.
I don't know what, if we can mute. Huh? I mean, looking at last year, Visit Pensacola got 1.8 million out of the 4th cent. So, so they do get money out of all 4 cents.
They can.
They can.
That is true, they can.
Yes.
My point is that the 4 cent is not in the TDT plan.
Right.
But they can get money out of the 4 cent. Okay, next box. Next box is outside agencies. All of these outside agencies are what the Board of County Commissioners are using of the 4th cent because these organizations promote tourism. So it's according to statute and it's in their purview. So that's what that next box is.
Is that set every year they get the same amount?
I believe how that works through OMB is the entity sends a request, and when they go through the next budget hearing, they will address how much money, and then they get a miscellaneous appropriation agreement. Is it the same amount every year? Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Do I understand that the Naval Museum was a contractual thing over a certain number of years, and then that will be paid off at some time?
The Naval Museum contract I gave you in your packet for you to review. I don't remember the specifics on that, but given COVID, given changes, there is county negotiation that happens.
Madam Chair, the last agreement was for a 1-year agreement. And so I believe we did have a longer MOU in the years prior to that. And we went year to, I guess going year to year. I would also say that as of right now, the amounts listed in these boxes have not been approved. This is as presented to our board. And we will be discussing those next week.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, do these groups come to you guys and show how they bring tourism, or is it just kind of a rollover of, how do they prove that, or how do they show statistics that these organizations are bringing tourism?
I hate
Sir,
to
I'll
interrupt
help
you, but they are making progress, because if you can remember about 3 or 4 meetings back, we asked that they put processes in place, and those organizations are doing so.
I
is
will
my
tell you
understanding.
that many of the organizations come before the commission and make a presentation, and the requirement of the MAA, Miscellaneous Appropriation Agreement, the contract, they have to follow through with quarterly reports that Sean up in OMB reviews, talks to them to make sure they're hitting their numbers, et cetera. So there's diligence going on through the county.
So is there a continual obligation to the Naval Aviation Museum, or did I understand from you that that's paid off and it's from year to year?
I would say my
I tell you
my
what,
understanding is right now it's only year to year. We do not have an outstanding MOU with them.
And what about the historic preservation?
miscellaneous appropriation agreements are typically for 1 year. They're typically for 1 year. I'll have-
So historic preservation, which is obviously the University of West Florida,
Yes, sir.
what kind of obligation beyond a budget year do we have?
I'll look at all those agreements. I really just don't have them in my head. Most miscellaneous appropriation agreements are for 1 year. I'll look at them. But I'll tell you who controls, and that's the dais of the Board of County Commissioners. Whatever changes they make for the next fiscal year, that's what controls. So while it may be an addendum to miscellaneous agreement, it is a brand-new fiscal year. It can be the same amount, it can be more, there could be other requirements.
Well, and as we talked about at the meeting, we were going to try to find the requirements of why are we obligated to pay it,
Mr. Davis just confirmed for me that those miscellaneous agreements are for 1 year. As far as obligated to pay it in the prior year, the current year that we're in now, that money would have already been paid.
Spent.
It's spent. Yes, sir.
Love it.
I have one question too. The fireworks, and I know this is the 101,796 is a request. Is that for Pensacola fireworks downtown? Is it the beach fireworks? Is it all the fireworks?
Pensacola and it's 75,000.
It is something that Visit Pensacola, I believe it's Sertoma Fireworks, which would be Pensacola mainland.
Madam Chairman, real quick, I thought we had asked that to be part of the unified budget process, those fireworks.
So last year, it was not a line item in the fourth cent, and it was part of the unified budget. I believe that Sertoma requested from Visit Pensacola that those funds, that they have access to funds for next year. Honestly, I don't know what the other 26,796 are. The 796 is a unique number that I don't see on my.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because I'd always heard it was 75,000.
It's 75,000. I think in another page, it shows like 101,000, that 26. There was some miscellaneous expenditures in there. I gave you an entire expenditure packet for you to review for yourself.
Madam Chairman, real quick. So we did put that under the unified budget request. That line item sort of falls under Visit Pensacola now. Is that what y'all are saying?
So, yes, last year, last year was.
Robert, excuse me, for 75, did we do that for 75 under unified for Visit? Thank you.
We did. So in fiscal year 19, they got 75,000. In fiscal year 20, they were zero from the 4 cent, but it came out of the unified budget.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
The last box on that page is the fiscal 21 unified budget. You can see the numbers for A's Pensacola Sports and Visit Pensacola. The total amount of the TDTs collected of the 1 through 3 is 5.4 million. Okay. Next page that I had for Mr. Reeves were just the audited numbers. We didn't really spend any time with it, but it was the audited numbers if you wanted to look at it. Again, this page right here that I laid on the dais gives you the updated amounts that we collected. The next page in your folder is something called reserves. You had questions about reserves. They've probably been answered, but this look, and we use this internally, so I just kind of provided you what we use internally, is where we are with the various contracts or POs, what the balance is, what the encumbrance was. If it says 1 through 3, that means the 1 through 3 cent. On the right-hand side, it's the 4th cent. So you can see all of those numbers match up through the reports that we gave you. Okay. Other things asked for by a member was a full detail of expenditures for TDT. That's Fund 108. There's a full detail for your review. We also took a revenue report and gave you our system report so you could see what that looks like. And then we also provided you a comparison report in summary so you could look at it a different way. Another question asked was about the Marine and who's doing it and who are we paying. Robert Turpin is a county employee and we pay him. I gave you all of his pay. Another question that came up is where are we, let's see, the next one is the Naval Museum. That's what I referred to and said if you'd like to see what a miscellaneous appropriation agreement looks like, that's the one for the Naval Museum. The next thing that was requested was, what does the Bay Center look like? What does that contract look like? It all started like in this particular handout, the 2012 agreement, and then it was renewed. There was a 2015 agreement, and most recently there's a third amendment that was dated about June of 2020. So it was asked.
Let me ask you,
Sir.
on the extension of the June 2020 agreement, did the Tourist Development Council have any input on that, or was that just strictly between the county commission?
Strictly between the county commission, typically, because under your plan, there are priorities, and priorities is the Bay Center, a civic center, and that is a BCC priority.
So they extended it for 5 years without any input from this board.
I would probably need to speak to Janice or Debbie because they deal with that contract.
It was extended to coincide with the Sun Belt Basketball Conference.
But that really wasn't the question. Was there any input from this board?
Not that I'm aware of.
So if it's not coming before this board, what is the point of this board?
There is in your statute a plan. In your plan, it says that you're to review all the expenditures and make recommendations to the board. The board in that plan has priorities, just like Miami and the rest of them. You can read them all, they look the same. And that is, the board has a prerogative to be able to use monies from the TDT collections, the 1 through 3 in the plan, for items specifically like the Bay Center.
Okay,
That
but-
plan also says that only 30% has to go to tourism, which would be kind of like your promotion, Visit Pensacola promotion.
Where does
See,
it
I
say
disagree
only?
with that. I think the board, this board recommends, and then the city, then the county either, BCC either votes it up or down.
Recommend
But if you
a plan.
never get a chance to recommend, then,
I guess if I were structuring this, what I would do on something like the Bay Center is if you know the contract is coming up for renewal or what's going on, have a meeting about the Bay Center. Mr. Bender is the representation that goes to the Board of County Commissioners who gives staff guidance. And guidance, I think, from what I remember listening, does have to do with the Sun Belt Conference, does have to do with the fact that they entered into an agreement and therefore extended that Bay Center agreement. But Mr. Bender, you might know more about that.
That's accurate.
I think that your input is valued and should be valued. I'd like to see you more proactive in looking at expenditures, more proactive in talking about reserves and contracts. As the comptroller, I would like to see that. I would like to see written recommendations go to the Board of County Commissioners. I think that is your value. You've just got to take that step to do it, which is what you're doing right here.
So I think in order for us to be able to be engaged in that conversation, I think it's, since we're a legislatively created board of the county, or commission of the county, we need the county staff to provide that information to us. When is the contract going to expire so that we can have an opportunity to put it on our agenda to discuss it? And I'm not speaking to you because you were.
No, and I
you
did
know.
see it, it was all over the county agenda. So it is out there and it is publicly noticed as far as
But it just
calling
wasn't
Ms.
brought to the
Cronley.
TDC.
The staff is so busy, I just don't know that somebody stopped to give
Right.
you a personal call.
Right, we spend
They'll call me
roughly $3
personally.
million a year on the Bay
Right.
Center, but it's not, of tourist development tax, but it's not important enough to bring it to the Tourist Development Council to discuss or address. We'll just sneak it through
I don't think
an
it was
agenda
snuck through, sir.
for the BOCC?
I believe it was on the agenda. There's many people that were in the audience right here today that were also in that meeting. I think it was heard.
Madam Chairman. I do think, speaking for my colleagues on this board, if you'll give me a second, I do believe that this board is intentionally being proactive and wants to be proactive in this part of the discussion. That's why we have all spent time out here volunteering our time for this. If there is a way for us to communicate effectively with the stakeholders in order for us to do our jobs more effectively, let it be done. But let us know how to do that. I think that's the most important thing here. Thank you.
Here's probably a good idea. If you look at that budget, you have certain line items on that budget. If it's of interest to you, pay attention to it. ask for the agreement.
Thank
I'll
you.
help you.
I appreciate you.
If you need
And-
help,
and we
OMB
do.
will help you.
We do. We absolutely do. So if there's something that comes before you and you say, hey, this might be appropriate, sort of somebody flag us, right? We all live in a silo where we don't pay attention to government as much as maybe people that work
Yeah.
here.
Sure.
So
I
that
will
might be
tell you-
something that we take a
yeah,
look at a little bit
I will tell you
further.
that the county budget workshops are coming up. I don't have the dates on my head, but I know they're in
Next Tuesday.
September. That's a really good thing to either attend, listen to, or just tune in for your items.
And I guess I would like to have a further discussion on, on bringing negotiations on the Bay Center in front of this board. And that it is a contract with Escambia County, so are we supposed to negotiate between this board and Escambia County, and then Escambia County and the
Great point.
management company? We had our assistant county administrator led those discussions, and if you have
Not
any
unless
questions.
you're using TDC funds.
Maybe just representation.
Certainly
I
a
don't know.
minimum input.
Yeah.
Well, I think we made some, we dug into the contract this year. I can't say that was necessarily written well before, but we tried to address some of those things. And so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
But I think that's water under the bridge at this point in time. To me, is what is it that we're spending funds on that the Tourist Development Council didn't pass upon? I think everybody wants the Sun tournament
Yeah.
to come. There's just so many other things that get passed out that you say, why are we giving I love the Naval Aviation Museum. Why are we giving them $100,000? Well, we always have. And see, those are the things that need to be revisited in my mind's eye. The other thing is, and Pam, I think, will agree with this, is it's the timing of how you pay those agencies. When everybody had to get a haircut, all the people that should have participated in haircut had already been paid. So the timing, like giving $2 million up front,
Well, the haircut was 400, those other agencies equated to 444,000, sorry, not even then, equated to $330,000 out of the entire budget. And because 75,000 for the Sertoma fireworks got put into Visit Pensacola's budget, which they ended up getting to use because there wasn't a fireworks show. So, if you're trying to say that the Naval Aviation Museum doesn't play a role in tourism,
I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just trying to say if you got the responsibility for doing it, then it needs to come past you. And let's go back to, I don't want to get ahead of you. First of all, I want to thank both you and Janice. It was a great presentation that you guys gave to us. The only thing that is not in the packet, which I would really love to see because I couldn't send it out, was what was necessary in order to impose the 5th cent.
Okay, we can go there. Let's talk, but I'm going to back up to wrap up a little bit of a thought on your last
Okay,
conversation.
I have one other comment, though. Robert, is it my understanding, and you may know this, when the county discussed with this Civic Center and the extension of the contract, it was because the Civic Center Management Company was making an investment for the basketball tournament for the Gulf South. And so for them making that investment into the scoreboard and various things, they needed some sort of assurances.
yes, because, yes, that's exactly correct, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Is there information anywhere that we can read and see of what they said they were going to do, and if that's done? And just to back up 1 second, I think what we were discussing, I would I would think that if $1.7 million is going to be spent on the Bay Center, that Tourist Development Council should have some sort of at least glance at that contract whenever it comes up. And I think it's mandated that a county commissioner be on this board. I think if we don't know about it, it should be brought to this board because it's part of the tourist tax. So if a 1.7 million of it's being spent and we have no say or even a glance at it, we're not controlling any of that 1.7. I would be very curious to see what SMG, how much they're spending to get this contract. SMG is a big company and they're very smart. They've played us like fools for the last 20 years. And just sounds like they signed us up for another 5 years by telling us they're going to put scoreboards up.
Well, I would say it's the whole reason why we have the TDT. It was a referendum vote, I believe in 1980, by the voters to fund 2 cents to go towards the Bay Center.
I understand that, but we need to use it wisely. I mean, SMG can lose money every year, and they're really good at it, and we have no way of stopping or controlling or looking at that. If we're going to just hand them another 5-year contract, I haven't read this thing because I just got it sent today, but I mean, this is 83 pages of contract that the first few pages looks actually just like the one that just got signed, which I did read the first 2 pages of this one. So I'm not exactly sure what got changed by the county commissioners, but if Tourist Development Council is not going to get any say-so in 1.7 million or more than that, that's a problem for me. I think this council is put together so that we can ensure that whoever gets this tourist tax is using it wisely and is able to show us that that money is spent and does what it's meant for, heads and beds.
I think you'd have to look at the plan that was reaffirmed in 2013, that says that 30% would go to the marketing, and then it's the other priorities that are in order. The acquisition, construction, extension, enlargement, remodel, repair, improvement, maintenance, operation, or promotion of one or more publicly owned and operated civic arenas, sports, cultural, convention complexes within the boundaries of the county. The financing of beach improvement, number 2, the financing of beach improvement, maintenance, renourishment, restoration, and erosion control, including shoreline protection, enhancement, cleanup, or restoration of tourist facilities at Pensacola Beach and Perdido Key. 3, the promotion, development, and advertisement of county tourism in the state and nationally and internationally. And then 4 is the additional uses set forth in State Statute 125.
Where are you reading this at?
That is Escambia County Ordinance 2013-40.
Is that something we have?
But that's the plan that the clerk keeps referring
All of this is
to.
online. Plan is ordinance 90.57. And let me tell you what you did with your plan, is you basically copied the state statute and took it as a plan. So we spent time looking at other plans throughout the state, and others are more specific. You could do more with your plan. So if I were making suggestions to this board, I would say read your plan and make a recommendation. If we're talking about the Bay Center, I'm going to put together a packet for you. I'm going to send you every expenditure. I'm going to send you everything. Review it. Ask them to come in here and talk. Get an education now. Even though the contract is already signed for a reason, the Sun Belt, but they have been pretty much an open book when they come here. Here's their expenditures. I get everything from them monthly. If you see a different or better way to manage, I'm sure the collaboration, I say I'm sure, I like collaboration, but your input and collaboration would benefit this entire county.
But
And as far as those other 4 or 5 that's on the 4th cent, pay attention to the workshop that's coming up. If you want something different in that miscellaneous agreement, get Ms. Gillies' attention.
And I have one other question before you move on. I don't quite understand, why does the TDC not manage the 4th cent? We have 1 through 3 and then possibly 5, but the 4th cent is off limits to this group.
Short version?
Yeah.
It's in the statute.
Okay.
The TDC council only governs over 1 through 3. It was 1 through 2. This county passed a 3rd. The 4th, it's very specific, and it says that unspent, unencumbered 4 cents can be, may be incorporated under the TDC, but it's not. as a
So
rule.
if our plan changed,
Correct.
then the TDC could recommend that the fourth cent be part of our budget, or
You can
the,
make that recommendation. It will go before the Board of County Commissioners. Any recommendations you all make, just know that in simple terms, the BCC vote trumps.
sure, I understand.
But yes, this board did not incorporate into the plan the fourth cent. So let's go straight to the 4 cent. Right, just the unspent.
Actually, I have another quick question.
Sure.
Backing up, and I know it's unrelated to all that discussion we just had, but something you breezed right past was the pay for Robert Turbin under the Marine Resources. Is 100% of his pay paid out of TDT?
Yes, sir, I gave it all to you.
Is 100% of his job doing tourism-related work?
Probably. He's marine and water and everything to do with ecological. It all relates to tourism.
The
Now,
budget showed,
Does his job description say you're going to do this because of tourism, you're going to do this because of tourism? But it passed the test for tourism.
But we spend, am I looking at it right, $2 million? Or no?
no,
Okay.
it's 226,000.
Oh, wait a minute.
And
I
that's
see. I got the
everything. That's
wrong one.
salary, that's benefit, that's FRS, that's FICA, that's all of it.
So Pam, the agenda item is status of funds available. And at what point are we going to discuss, from your perspective, the fact that we've got $1.1 million to spend in the next 2 months and another $500,000 by the end of December?
You're specifically talking about Visit Pensacola, an outstanding PO, and $500,000
I'm
of
talking
CARES.
about, we tried to get another $1 million with the county commission's help, and you've got a PO outstanding
Right, for $1
for
million.
$664,000.
Yes and no. There is, it's the words you use. There's a PO outstanding for $1 million. I told you that in the contract, we upfront $2 million. It's incumbent upon Visit Pensacola throughout the entire fiscal year to provide expenditures to certify what they've spent. If they don't certify those funds, they have to give them back. That number is 664. Sorry to correct, but that's,
Right.
they're different.
And then you have a $500,000
CARES.
that has to be spent by the end of the fiscal year.
December.
And I have,
End of the
no,
calendar year.
different.
The CARES.
CARES.
CARES
is calendar year.
December 31st.
Correct.
But between the two numbers, there's $1.1 million that has to be either spent or get receipts for, and then there's another $500,000. So basically, when this board asked for another $1 million, we got it kind of a little bit here and a
Well, you
little
haven't
bit from
spent
the.
what you've already been given. So we'll see what Visit Pensacola, and they're here, they can speak. They have to certify $662,000, 664, whatever it is, and they have to spend a PO. They may be doing that. They just haven't given it to me yet. They have until like mid-October to do that. So if they can spend $1.5 million, it's really $1.6 million,
Okay, based on what they've spent in the past, how long would it take to spend $1.6 million?
This is not a normal year, but I think everybody's pretty good at spending. So I'd have to hear from Visit Pensacola's leadership to see how they're doing with that spending, because they have been told to cut back, and I believe they know they were going to wait on certain campaigns possibly until next fiscal year. So they may have made decisions to not spend that entire PO, not certify all of those things, that $2 million. And this is why, and let me explain it. There's a budget that will go forward for fiscal '21. It's just a budget, doesn't represent actual. At a point in time, maybe life gets more normal, maybe we collect more tax. The Board of County Commissioners can do a supplemental budget resolution where they give additional monies to tourism for the TDC to oversee. They can do it again in January with additional money. So there can always be additions to a budget based on actual. There can also be carryover monies that get reappropriated.
Okay. I'm really concerned about a couple of sessions ago, everybody came to the board and said, we got to put some more money in there. And all I'm saying is, the way I understand it, they've got to spend $1.6 million
They do.
before the end of the year. And if they don't spend $1.6 million, they're going to have to pay you $600,000 back.
That is true.
So, to me, we've moved forward with additional money as we tried to do at the last meeting.
We, if I may,
Sir.
we did. So yes, they still have the 662 outstanding of the 2 million that was, and those could just be receipts that needed to come in. I'm not familiar with that. That's not to say that it hasn't been spent. So the board approved $500,000 for the end of the fiscal year, and said any unspent funds, we would be happy to extend those into the next fiscal year. So I don't know if there's going to be an update on what they may think that number could be, but I'm sure it's probably be some amount will then be added to whatever the proposed budget is. On top of that, you have the $500,000 in CARES that is to be spent in marketing between now and the end of the year. And then
The end of the
end of the
regular
calendar
calendar
year,
year.
yes. And again, that discussion was had before we had the 1.8 number for August collections. So the fact that we collected in August what we expected or forecasted to collect in August and September probably tells me that we're going to have a little bit of extra money in September. And I think, I mean, of course, the hoteliers would have a good idea on how well they did in September. I heard, I mean, how well they did in August for our September collections. So they may be able to estimate that we're going to exceed $800,000. So if we, I mean, whatever we collect in September is almost gravy at this point for what we had forecasted. The question would be, do we expect to collect more than what we've budgeted for next year? And I think that's what the clerk is saying, is that as within relatively short order of the new fiscal year, the Board of County Commissioners could give a supplemental amount to the unified budget. I think what's changing this year than what's occurred in years past is that namely the visit budget or the unified budget has included the supplemental. I mean, they were expecting it. It was in the budget. Personally, that's not how you do a budget. That's how you end up having to cut all this money that ends up not coming when things don't go your way. So I think the budget that will be presented is based on a conservative estimate. The budget amount of, I think it's right around $10 million this year. But of course, that would include whatever's left over from the $500,000 would be added to that. If you want to include the $500,000 in CARES, so that's, I'd say anywhere from.
But my point was that the county commission responded to the $1 million request that this board made at the last meeting.
We did.
Absolutely. And so the only point is there's a crisis and we responded to it, thanks to the county commission.
Correct. Good point. I'd like to talk to you about 4 cent, and I believe this is in the 4th section of your packet. And it's just a Q&A. Someone asked me about the 4 cent, so I wanted to provide you an answer. And the question is the 4 cent included in the plan? I've told you throughout today, it is not. Does the 4 cent require TDC vote. It does not.
Is
What's
it,
also
is
on
it
that page,
specifically excluded from the plan?
statute states it is not in the plan.
I know, but I'm asking, is it specifically excluded from the plan? That's
It
a
does.
completely different thing. So it
It
says
does.
4th cent is not included
The
in the
1 through
TDC plan.
2 is, and then it says an additional, and then it talks specifically about the 4 cent, because the 4 cent is the additional sport or a sports facility tax, franchise tax. So is the 5th cent. Whatever you, if you decide you want the 5th cent, it works exactly like the 4 cent. Exactly. It's just an addendum, like 1 and 2, and you did an addendum of the 3rd, it's exactly like 1 and 2. So 1, 2, 3 is in the plan. You do a 4th, it's outside the plan, it's got specific reasons that you use it. The 5th is just like it.
So if we have the 5th, then we have to designate, we want it for marketing, or we want it for, or based on the state statutes of how it can be used. Is that,
The 5th cent does not come before this board. You can make a recommendation. The 5th cent is under the control of the county commissioners, just like the 4th cent.
That's what I was going to ask, sorry, Madam Chairman. So that's statutory in the county, not the state. That's what you're saying. Yeah.
It's statutory by state, and it's in your plan as a county.
Madam,
Okay, so there's some expenditure listing if you wanted to see what it was spent on.
Madam Clerk, if I may just interject real quick.
So
The, what I've asked, or what legal is currently drawing up for the 5th cent is 2 options. One would be to spend it on marketing. And then, and that does include some, everything that includes, tourist promotion related things. And then option B would be, also as included under statute, the structure, a sports structure or something like that, a convention center or something. And so that was based off the direction that it seemed this board was headed in our last discussion, and that it was our intent to try to limit those funds to marketing dollars, at least in the short term.
is, when that is drawn up, will this board, even if we have a special meeting or something, will this board see that or use it as a recommendation, or just go with it as that?
Right now, it is in the hands of the Board of County Commissioners. We have set, I believe it's October 1st as the hearing date to present that ordinance, in which we would take public comment for that.
Madam Chairman? Robert, will that be out before that, so it can be reviewed just publicly?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is, it has to be
It
advertised.
has to be, right.
Yes.
Okay,
Well-
just make sure.
We had 3 votes in favor of the 5th cent, but one of the commissioners said, I want to make sure that the 5th cent isn't limited to just tourism promotion. I think it should be used for sports buildings as well. So, I mean, you need to be aware of that.
Okay, I'm not aware of who's said that. I do not recall it being mentioned from the dais. The only conversation we had from the dais regarding the 5th cent was that before we voted to implement it, we did want to know what it was going to be spent on. So if that's conversations that you've had with,
No, that was in the News Journal. And they absolutely, so I know it's the truth.
I don't recall a colleague saying that from the dais, but if that's the case, but
Lumen said it.
I would say also, though, that was pre-COVID, and a lot has changed. We were looking at a lot of different options, and I think that based off of what has happened this year, in terms of Visit having to cut their budget, that hopefully they could see the impact that the additional monies could have on advertising and go towards that.
One of the handouts we received on the 5th cent was titled Pensacola Sports Arena, or Pensacola Sports, something of that sort. It was handed out last meeting, indicating
On
the
the
5th
5th
cent.
cent? I don't recall, I have
don't
not
recall
given
that.
you anything on the 5th cent unless it was directly out of the statute. If you want to read it, it's statute 125.
And Madam Chair, I think at least Councilman Wu might be trying to get you, so I don't know if there's been any comments, if Councilwoman Myers wants to, but I just want to make sure that we have a chance to recognize the two on the attending
Yeah.
virtually.
PC, if you'd speak.
He's muted.
Hold on, PC, we can't hear you. Okay, if you just want to hold it up to the,
Yeah, Madam President, my question is, if I understand it correctly, the 4 cent is under the control of the Board of County Commission. If the 5 cents get passed, from what I'm hearing him say, will they have control of that as well?
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct.
That is correct, PC.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, President, thank you.
Okay?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
did this board know that before we recommended to,
Well, we
Pass
knew
the
that we
5th
were
cent.
asking for the 5th cent to be used at our last meeting for marketing purposes only, for the unified budget. And that was the request that we made that was taken to the county commissioners, that the 5th cent would supplement what we are lacking from the pandemic.
and one more question, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but some of the people that spoke today, the December meeting last year where this panel decided to vote on the 5th cent was not on the agenda. After our last meeting, I asked for the agenda, and I got it from Visit Pensacola, and I looked through it, the minute, sorry, and the agenda, and I didn't see that. How does this panel decide to discuss and vote on something like that without talking to any stakeholders that collect it or Visit Pensacola that spends it?
There had been a lot of discussion about the 5th cent over the years, and there are definitely those that are in favor and definitely those that are not. When we took that vote in December, there was not a policy on this board. The policy was you could bring up something and it could be voted on, and that was the way that we were set up. In the following meeting, it was set up, that I set it up, that we would not include anything if it wasn't on the agenda. It was after the March meeting, actually, because one of the things that occurred at the March meeting, it was before the pandemic. We were starting to feel the effects, and we got a emotional request come forward to us from a hotelier that we are getting lots of cancellations, and we have got to do something to stop these cancellations. So basically, this board voted to fund Visit Pensacola an additional $250,000 to use for the advertising purposes to try to offset this. Well, thank goodness, Visit Pensacola, we voted as an emotional thing to give them that money. Well, 3 days later, pandemic, we could have been advertising that we'd give them free rooms, but nobody was going to come. Thank goodness they reassessed and did not use that $250,000 that we did, allowed them on an emotional plea. So from that time on, I said, if it's on the agenda, that we will vote on it. But if it's not on the agenda, then we will have a special meeting or we wait to the next meeting. But I think this board is active enough. If we have to have a special meeting, we will. But when that when that vote was taken, it was a legitimate vote, and then it was voted not to rescind that vote. So we had made a recommendation to the county commissioners for the 5 cent on the bed tax. And that's how it,
I'd also add that 3 of the spots of this board are occupied by people that do collect the tax. I mean, so that's the representation.
I mean, I don't know who all was at that meeting. I wasn't because I was on the board then. I know Nash Patel that was on the board was not at that meeting.
board at that time.
He was on the board, he was not at the meeting.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I do know that I own 6 hotels, Darpan owns 4 hotels. I represent owners that have 75% of the hotels in Pensacola, and none of us knew that that was going to be discussed. Yes, it's been discussed over the years, by many years, about a 5 cent, because the county commissioners have asked for it. But that was not on the agenda for this panel. It may be water under the bridge, but I think this panel, before making decisions, should talk to stakeholders and to Visit Pensacola, whoever else is going to spend that money before we go out and start making recommendations. I know you just said that it was voted on, that it cannot be rescinded. I didn't see that in the minutes. I'll read that again, but I don't remember seeing that.
We took a vote last meeting about, and I think the motion was made by you, that trying to rescind that vote.
Okay. I thought you meant back in December, that when they voted, okay.
The other thing is, Allison was kind enough, in our discussion with the county administrator and with Pam Childers, we put forth issues that should be considered before the 5th cent was implemented. I'm not able to give that to you, but the county staff is able to give you that. And I think you will see that some of the issues that you are bringing up are in that paper that we presented to both Ms. Childers and the county administrator. You'll like it.
Pam, do you have anything else? I do not. Okay, thank you so much. Is there any other questions from this board to Ms. Childers or the budget, management and budget group? All
Madam
right.
Chair, real quick.
Yes.
Pam, I just want to thank you and your team for
Yes.
putting this together. This is an enormous amount of pull together that you guys did, above and beyond what you guys are doing on your daily tasks, just to come down here and teach class, and you guys did an amazing job. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Comment. I think that it's important that this council be relevant. And if you're going to be relevant, you need to stay up on the issues that are coming before the county commission. You need to get it on your agenda and have some input. Doing things after the fact and then saying, well, why? That's not going to work. We're all going to have to just work a little bit harder on this. And the comments on the 5th cent will address that. I'm going to get you some information on the Bay Center so that there can be more collaboration. If we work together as a county and agencies, it'll go a lot better, but thank you.
I agree, and Pam, thank you. But I would also say that if we're going to spend $330,000 of the TDT tax on payroll, I guess, or county administrator, whatever we're paying for, then that person should inform us of this information. Sounds like a lot of information. And I'm new to the board. This is my 3rd meeting, but it sounds like folks that have been on the board for a long time are finding out things that I'm finding out today. So that, I'm kind of throwing it back to whoever at county has this information. I got it all today, I mean, a couple hours before the meeting. But it would be better, and I think if new members come, they should have some, this should be a packet that you get when you become TDC, on the TDC panel, that you get this so that you know what you're looking at, rather than to sit here and listen and then say, well, I don't know about that, and I don't know about that. And that's how I was the first 2 meetings, and I'm thinking, man, where's this money going? Where's this money going? Who took this money? I'm just up here clueless, and I just know there's a lot of hands with their palms with their hands out, and very little money here. So I think for future, whoever handles that, needs to do a better job of getting the information to us. And like you said, we need to be more active, but the only way we're going to be active is if we have the information. If it's just on a county website, I'll promise you I'm not going to go look at a county website. That thing's confusing as hell. So it's got to be sent to us, and it's got to be told to us, hey, this is relating to tourism or tourism industry. It may be important to you. And then it's up to us if we read it or ignore it or take part in it or want to learn more about it. But if we don't have the information, we're going to make the wrong decisions, and we don't
And
need
you
to.
got more information today than
Than
you have in the
the last
last
5 years.
five meetings.
That's the thanks, Payne. Thanks, Payne.
And they did a great job. Again, thanks to both of you,
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Janice
Pam.
included.
Yes, thank you. Just one other question. We got the contracts for the Bay Center and or ASM Global and all the amendments and stuff. The other thing I would like to get is how, like a schedule of how that 1.7 million was paid out. The budget was 1.5.
Right.
And we were aware of the 1.5.
A comment that I made while we were talking is, I didn't have a whole lot of hours in the day.
Yeah, no, I get
Who's
that,
new?
and I
They're in
appreciate
an
you pulling
audit.
it all
It's-
together.
It's a little crazy, but I'm going to put together something for the Bay Center that I think you'll find informative.
Great.
I'm going
And
to
it'll
get that.
include that
But
schedule.
in your packet, you have how things are spent out.
Okay.
It'll be in there too. And I
Oh,
think
okay.
I circled it or called it Bay Center. I did something so that you could see in Fund 108, how is this being spent? But there's another fund that handles all of the Bay Center. We would like to be transparent, get input. They need input. This county needs to make decisions collectively.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yes, Pam, thanks to you and your staff. I do want to make one change on the agenda. I'm going to ask Visit Pensacola. Darren, if you would come up before Janice, only because I'm hopeful that you can tell us a little bit about your next year's budget, so that if we have any questions of you and we have to look at Ms. Gilly, ask her questions, then we've got that information. Okay?
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry?
Thank you and good afternoon. I know we've covered quite a bit of ground already. I just want to start out by thanking the TDC for its recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners to increase the marketing budget for Visit Pensacola by $1 million out of the reserves. The Board of County Commissioners did act on your recommendation, and they reallocated $500,000 for us to spend on marketing for the remainder of our current fiscal year, with the option of adding another $500,000 in the next fiscal year. The Board of County Commissioners also approved $500,000 of CARES Act funding for developing and implementing a regional marketing campaign that really shares the message that Escambia County is open, has wide open spaces and activities that visitors can safely enjoy. This campaign of safe and healthy travel to and through the county be done through TV, digital and social media, and our drive markets, basically sharing that safety measures of Escambia County, and that'll be targeted for October through December. Regarding the $500,000 investment for this fiscal year, it's going to fund our marketing efforts during the month of September, as well as a planned research study on the unique emotional positioning of our destination. The study is designed to identify what sets a Pensacola experience apart from our competitors, and what words and emotions do we own in the hearts of our visitors. It's that kind of information that will help provide a direction of our future marketing and our strategic planning. I recognize that we have a full agenda. I would like to focus my time on the upcoming budget for the fiscal year 2021. Given the challenges created by the COVID-19 pandemic, I strongly encourage the TDC to make a budget recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners that puts a high priority on advertising and promotion to bring visitors and their discretionary income into Escambia County to support our businesses, our tourism community, and the over 19,000 area residents that they employ. Back during the June workshops, the county administration proposed a unified budget at that time representing 54% of the estimated annual TDT receipts for the unified budget. And that would be about 1.5 million less than what we'll have ended up receiving this year. The unified budget request was 65% of the TDT receipts, which has historically been the investment level into the unified budget. And despite discussions that have happened since and deepening financial repercussions to area businesses, the county administration is going to continue to recommend the 54% investment level. As you know, it's the responsibility of the TDC to make budget recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. I am here representing the unified budget to ask that the TDC recommend a plan for the use of TDT in the fiscal year of 2021 that invests 65% of the estimated TDT receipts. And to do so in the unified budget for marketing, advertising, promotion, event development that creates visitor spending and tax receipts for Escambia County. I put together 3 options together for your consideration, and with your permission, I'd like to pass these hard copies out. Have we done that? Oh, we've done that already. Fantastic. We also put them up on the board. And basically, in reviewing these options, option A is our requested investment of 65% of the TDT receipts. And I just want to note that in all these options that we look at, the 3, we have only changed the amounts really being proposed by the county administration in the red boxes. So the county administration costs, instead of $330,000, would be 3%, which is $290,872. And then the other 2 boxes are the reserve and the Board of County Commissioner Projects Reserve. And as you see in option A, there's very little dollars in the reserve or the Board of County Commissioners Project Reserve. But what doesn't change is the Marine Resources, which actually is receiving a 15% increase over last year or over this year, as well as all the other agency allocations. None of those are being reduced. At this level, the unified budget is still $572,000 less than what we received this year, and Visit Pensacola itself will be $1 million less than we had to spend this year. Option B is based on the unified budget receiving 59.5% of the TDT receipts, and this is basically a halfway point between 65% and 54%. And when you look at option B, what you end up seeing is the reserve coming up to 5% and some additional dollars now in the projects reserve. Otherwise, everything else is the same. As far as the Board of County Commission Administration and the outside agency allocations, in option C, with the unified budget receiving 54%, that's where you see that, yes, the reserve is at 5%, and the Board of County Commissioners Project Reserve is at $597,000. I'm putting these numbers together based on the best information that's been made available to us by the county administration. I don't necessarily have access to a lot of the information that Pam talked about today. We'd certainly love to have a copy of that so that we can go through it as well. But basically, we're looking at those 3 red boxes and the changes between the 3 options. I guess in all options, the unified budget will be receiving less money than it did this current fiscal year. The least amount of money that will be down would be $572,000. It goes up to $1.5 million with the option C, which is being funded at 54%. So on behalf of all the partners in the unified budget, we appreciate your consideration of our request. And as you debate a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'd like to make a motion to make the recommendation to the county commission to fund the unified budget at 65% of the total TDT collection.
I'll second.
Okay.
Can we have some discussion?
Now we have some discussion.
I just got a couple questions. It goes back to this whole Sertoma thing, and I've asked it a bunch of times. I just want to know. And I think before a lot of people were actually on this council, I asked this when I first came aboard. Does the city pay any money for that, or is that just a county function for Sertoma? And I don't remember. Does anybody remember that? Can somebody just point that out to me?
Well, the contribution comes from the county, and that's $75,000.
Right.
Of which about $40,000, it's my understanding, covers the actual fireworks.
Yes, sir.
And the rest of the money covers some of the carnival Unfortunately, I haven't experienced it myself, so I can't really
It's
speak
great. It's a great time.
from
It
place
really
of
is.
knowledge.
It's an amazing time.
Okay.
And I'm disappointed that I can't do that. But as far as the city's involvement, there may be some permits for the space, and there might be some contributions towards traffic control.
Staffing and,
Staffing. Okay, thank you.
all right. Any other discussion? We
Yes,
have- yeah.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I think what's important to note, though, is that the budget presented did not include the 500,000 in CARES money that's being presented, does not include any carryover from the 500,000 that would be presented, and it's putting $15,559 in a reserve account. I think that's extremely short-sighted. And Darren, I'll recap the conversation I had earlier. The 1.5, that it's less than what you had this budget year. This budget year included 1.4 in a supplemental budget that's not included in this budget. So that's again, I think that's the more appropriate way to do a budget, by not including supplemental theories. But it does seem that we are tracking for that right now. And so I think if this is the budget, the 65% is the budget that you want for the year, then I think that would probably be the way to go. And then the Board of County Commissioners can fill in the red boxes with any supplemental that we have if we want to do that. If we want to make it more across the board, and again, we're already $800,000 above what we expected to collect in the last 2 months. We're at the expected collections for the last 2 months, with 1 month left to go, and that revenue was expected to be $800,000. I forecast that we will probably have some monies to make a supplemental budget amendment to the unified budget. I think it's important probably to know of what could actually pass the Board of County Commissioners. Just for the fact that we're putting $16,000 in a reserve account that is already nearly depleted, I'm going to vote no for this, and I'll vote no at it at the Board of County Commissioners meeting. So.
Yes, David?
I would recommend, Robert, that we move the $375,000 from beach maintenance into reserves and utilize our public works budget that used to do the beach maintenance. That's where that money used to come from. Instead of taking it out of TDT like we have the last 2 years, move it back to the county's budget. And then you've got approximately $390,000 going into reserves.
That would be great, but so this is the first year that we've used that out. The budget would be the second year.
Correct, that's what I mean.
And I would say that would be great if when we took over Public Works, that we didn't experience a $4 million shortfall than what we were anticipated. And I think the beautification of the island, which was something that we felt was important, was the reason why it came out of this pot to be able to put forth our best foot forward when visitors do come on the island. I'm not aware that we would have $375,000 to put towards that at this time.
I don't know how we got from $125,000 this year to $375,000 being proposed for next year.
I don't believe all 375 is of, and I don't.
Let me ask a question, Pam. On your budget worksheet, who worked those numbers up?
And I did want to make a comment to his handout, just so y'all know, it's about 500,000 short of revenues.
It's what?
On what he handed to you is about 500,000 short of revenues. All the budget numbers that I've seen go through the county, doing my own keeping up with what's going on, is using a 2016 level, which is 10.1 million and not 9.6 6, I think you said. So the first thing I would do is say redo that and use the numbers that county is giving you, OMB is giving you. Use the 10.1, because that's what I've seen in the documents. The 3% for administrative cost, it will always be 3% of whatever the budget is. That's just how, it's a calculation, so you don't need a recommendation. Robert is right, there was a shortfall, huge shortfall on the island with all of those changes. So I do remember the beach mowing moving over there. And you asked me something specific, Mr. Reeves, and I think I didn't answer you.
Well, I'm just trying to look at, kind of carrying Robert's point forward, is they've got less money because they got $9,695,000, and you've got $10,195,000, so that's 65% of the difference between those two.
Well, a couple of things. He's getting less money because we're not going to budget supplemental dollars. So they need to understand that. They do understand that. They may not want it that way, but that is probably how it's going to go forward. I certainly will be vocal about it.
So just say we said, let's unfund the Naval Aviation Museum for $100,000. And let's say we got $800,000 carryover, because here's what happens. You literally do not get fiscal year September income until October.
Correct.
So it would seem to me that you have that income, and then you have whatever carryover income.
That is incorrect. We start the year based on the fiscal year when we collect. So you don't get to yet grab 13 months of revenue and say we have this. But what we will do is whatever is left over and the board votes, BCC votes, you can have supplemental monies from the carry forward. If the revenue produces more than 10 million, let's say we go to 16 million, and somewhere in February we're like, hey, there's a lot more revenues there, this board should recommend, and Bender should take to the board, that of the excess revenues, we want yet a supplemental increase. That's the steps you should take in this kind of budget. Did I answer the question? I probably didn't.
Yeah.
No.
So the August stays with September collections close out the collections for the fiscal year. The September stays that are collected by the clerk's office by October 20th is the first month of fiscal year 2021.
Yeah, right. You are correct.
But to your point, is everything that is collected in August was July sales.
Correct.
So everything in September should be gravy based on unbudgeted, and assume that's just 800,000 for the fun of it.
Right.
And then if they had a $200,000 carryover,
There's an extra million.
there's $1 million, and they're at 65%.
Yep.
So how do we make that happen?
You sell more rooms,
And
do more
around-
advertising.
That's right.
And around November, after the budget is approved, around November, we'll give you a financial update, and you can make decisions and recommendations to take it to the BCC, and they will talk about doing supplemental.
But we need to make the recommendation before they do budgeting.
Right.
You won't get it in the budget. When they do the budget workshops, it's going to be based on projections. That's it. They're not going to say, well, if they don't spend, and if we get it, and if, it's just not going to happen, because they're having meetings next week, and they're going to base it on facts, projections that they have in their hand.
I would say that I believe there were 3 board members that day, that they were favorable of supporting Visit. I mean, of course, we did the 500,000 from the reserves, the 500,000 from the CARES, said that any of the $500,000 that did not get spent by the end of the fiscal year, Chairman Barry seemed that there would not be any issue with him to carry that forward to the next fiscal year. I actually also left it open that because we had only given 500 of the million requested from this board, that would still be on the table. And so I think that given that, I think our board would be open to giving a supplemental budget to the unified budget, should it be there. Yes, as we said, we were expecting to collect 1.8 million for August and September. We collected 1.8 in August. So that would definitely give us a benefit, a positive benefit, heading into the next year.
Madam Chairman?
Let me ask you this, David. Instead of doing a 65%, why don't we make a motion, a substitute motion, that says that we recommend to the board at least $6,302,228 to be appropriated to the unified total budget, which is what the 65% plan does, and look at the carryover and the money collected in August. To me, for them to have the total amount of money you want them to have is more important than the 65%.
David?
So the 65% on their document, Pam just said, is this number that they're building this budget off of, this 9.6 million, is not accurate. It's over 10 million.
Well, the county workshop is going to have 10,195,512 instead of
9 million.
their 9 million.
All right. So the 6 million, what was the number you used?
Well, it's 6,302,228,
So that
bottom
would-
line.
So that would approximately be 62% if we were using percentages of what is going to be presented in their budget at the workshops.
Well, I think our recommendation is that they ought to get at least the amount of money that they're asking for.
And we're asking for money based on the projections that the county originally provided to us. We haven't received these updated numbers. We've asked for them, but most recently, what we got back just in the last couple of days was still based on just being under 9.7. So what we're talking about, the 65%, we're talking about the priority and the importance of marketing to the continued success of the tourism industry in Escambia County. So whether it's 10 million in revenue or 15 million in revenue, that we continue to invest in the unified budget and those agencies that are directly working to bring folks into the county.
Would you rather have a recommendation for 5,700,000, 5,200,000, or 6,300,000?
Probably for 7 million.
I would take the recommendation for 6.3 million.
Madam Chairman, real quick.
Yes.
Does any of these numbers affect your staffing for next year? Or are you set with your staffing?
We've made all of the transitions
Okay.
to our staffing, so regardless of the budgeted amount, we'll be able to maintain our current staffing levels. It really impacts marketing. So at 54%, what's in the budget is just over $1.1 million. That's less than $100,000 a month. In addition to that, we do have the $500,000 in CARES Act, which would be invested October through December, allows us to push some of our other marketing dollars into later into the year. The carryover that has been discussed, if that happens, that would be in addition to that. Additional funds between now and the end of the fiscal year that are brought in also come into play.
I would say that and Madam Clerk, I don't know where the 10.1 came from, if that's been changed. I know what we received in our budget workshop over the summer was showing the 9.7 was 61% going to tourist promotion. I think I'll say it's misleading, that in the 61% does include the box of BOCC outside agencies, which account for in this budget that we're looking at, the 410,000. And so, and out of that was the 5.8. So it looks like, Darren, maybe the delta in what we're talking about is about $1 million. Is that right? Because 5.8 minus the 400 and your ask of 6.3. I think probably one of the more difficult one of the more difficult things to follow along is because we keep talking percentages. Just give me a dollar amount. And that's, I mean, I make budgets based on dollar amount, not by percentages. And so I think that's really where we need to start having this conversation. And I understand that that hopefully as we regain our fund, our income, and it continues to grow, that you want to grow with us. And I don't think anyone would be opposed to that. But it's, and I think that's why, again, this board was so supportive of a large, if not all, of the 5th cent going towards marketing in the short term.
All right, thank you.
Which is
David?
not even involved in that at this point.
Okay. David?
So I want to address why percent. The unified budget, when it started working together, operated under, it was receiving at the time it formed, well, Visit Pensacola and Pensacola Sports went together as soon as Visit Pensacola came out of the chamber. But then ACE came and joined at the request of the county commission. And when they did, the 3 agencies looked at what amount of money of tourist development tax they were receiving in that prior fiscal year and said, okay, we are ACE's 12% or whatever it is of the initial budget of the TDT, and then it's 25% of the supplemental TDT. Pensacola Sports was 13% of the original and of the primary appropriation, but they did not receive any of the supplemental except through partnership with Visit Pensacola. Visit Pensacola was 75% of the beginning, 75% of the supplemental. And the reason that the groups decided to work together and base their percent of the appropriation to the unified budget on a percent was because when they worked together, they were stronger and the tide rised and all boats float. And so they shared in the gain and they shared in the loss. And so as a percent, when the agencies were working together and they were doing good work, it was incumbent on each of those agencies to make sure that they were doing work for tourism to grow that pot, so that their programs were dependent on, ACE's program was dependent on Visit Pensacola's success, and Pensacola Sports was dependent on ACE's success. And so it worked. The pot continued to grow. All 3 agencies working together helped improve tourism through the marketing campaigns. They diversified the marketing campaigns to try to reach a broader audience, et cetera, et cetera. And so the reason that the unified budget would like, and at least in my conversations in the past with Steve Hayes and what I'm gathering from Darren moving this message forward, to use the percent is if the county has a bad year, then we all have a bad year, not just one organization. So if we fix it at 6.5 and the county has a bad year, are they going to turn around and do another supplemental appropriation to take money away from them? Or if it's better, then there's more money for everyone in a supplement or in another appropriation. But that means it's incumbent on, hold on one second. It's incumbent on all of the people listed on this budget to work together. If everybody gets a percent of the spend, then it's important to work together to try to continue to at least at minimum maintain the revenue that's coming in, the collections of TDT, or better, improve it. And so if the county decides that they're just going to put it into landscaping, and landscaping is really not a great use of TDT, It doesn't generate heads and beds. Sure, it's pretty and maybe we're maintaining, we're not losing tourism, but it's not growing it, then maybe that's not where it should come from. But the county has the decision because they have a percent of it also. If it's 35%, then the county decides how they use the 35% and they spend it as appropriately as possible to try to help grow the tourism. Because that's the point of the TDT, is to grow tourism.
I mean, if that's the case, then, I mean, is that going to be the same split for the supplemental? Because I think in years past, the supplemental, almost nearly 100% has gone to the unified budget.
I don't know that
And that's, I mean, that's
because we never get full documentation, Robert.
I don't disagree.
We
So,
went from $550,000 in our cash flow Fund 108 to $5.3 million at the end of this last fiscal year. So where did that money come from if it didn't come from additional revenues that were collected and remitted to the county? So clearly it hasn't 100% been allocated back out through supplemental. It's been retained by the county in the tourism promotion fund. That's why that fund has grown.
so I do want to make the mowing beach maintenance seemed high to me. The contract is for 125. In our budget sheet, we have 125 plus 247,500. It says county indirect cost 3%. So I think we've got the 3% in here twice. I mean, is that accurate, Madam Administrator?
I'm sure. It's a lot of lawn cutting.
I mean, I think you do have it looks like I do have a 250 at the bottom here for the fiscal year 20 contract for the Bob Sykes. And so maybe
Yeah,
it's,
what I can confirm
well, that would
is
make
that-
375. So it's using that money that's already been,
Yeah, all I can confirm is that the beach mowing is 125.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any other beach maintenance issues that would equal another 250, so I want to make sure.
well, looking at the bottom though, it may be that we've booked the 250 that we plan to spend on the bridge for next year. It's part of the
So you
600
think-
that was already approved. That,
Yeah.
So then it doesn't come out of the 9 point, whatever, the $10 million for
Okay,
next
so
year's
it's not
collection.
beach, it's right, it's not beach maintenance, it is Bob Sykes.
okay.
But that came out of the reserves and the current tourism promotion fund that existed this year, that was already encumbered out of the $5.3 million.
I may have the clerk explain on that one just to make sure that. I know we didn't put this together. Yep.
You're going to have to ask me that question again, because I need to make a correction to the starting number.
Okay.
So we can either go with yours or my correction.
I'm going by what I've been told.
Oh, sorry, older folks. Okay, the reason I'm at 10.1 and he's at 9.6, because I just pulled the email that was sent to them, is because they are already deducting the 5% holdback. And then they do it again in their thing. When I do their math, let me have it. When I do their math, how they did this, you take the how do I say this? There's a $200,000 plug in here that everybody agreed to do to get them to the 2016 level, but they're taking the holdback at the top, the 9.695. They're also taking it again under BCC County Administration. So there is your $500,000 swing. I think you just got to know that up front.
And I would concur based on the chart that we have
Yeah.
from, that is,
It's
the
not that I'm-
holdback is not in the pie chart that we were
Right.
presented in the BCC's budget hearing of 9.7 with 61% going to, yeah.
Yes, that's where it is. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you while you're talking, but I just wanted to tell the numbers. Okay, now.
Recommendation for this board. It seems to me that we would recommend 6.3 or 6.5 for the entire year. Now, that's going to vary depending on collections, if the world goes, but, and then the people within the unified budget can adjust it any way they want to.
Well, that's not exactly true. So how you would have to present it, your recommendation this is how I think you have to do, talking to the comptroller, is at the bottom, you have a unified budget. You have ACE, PS, and Visit Pensacola. You need to slot those numbers. So if those numbers as is, as 6.3, you also have to break it down, and I forget, direct programming, personnel, operating, and capital. You have to provide those numbers. So if I were you, I would get a document from Darren that has 6.3 as your bottom line. He would break out each of these individuals, and he would do those 4 categories and say, county, this is what we want to submit. It's only a recommendation. They're going to base it on what they know and a vote. That's how I would do it if I were you.
The unfortunate thing, that's why I asked about staffing, because we have to know line by line. Otherwise, this is just tricky math.
And we do have that breakdown at both ends of the scale. To answer your question, Commissioner Bender, we would take 65%, and when the supplemental comes in, split it 65-35 with the county and live and die based on the success of our organizations in doing that marketing in good times and in bad.
And just where did the 65 come from? Was that this year's budget?
65% is based on historically over the last 5 years, it's been 65% of TDT receipts or higher, up to 75% back in 16 and 17.
I do want to remind you, though, that your control is only the 1 through 3. Jim, your control is only 1 through 3. So the 4th cent is all intermixed in here. So when you start talking about 60, I know this gets to be blue money, green money, and percentages, and it's crazy, but this is my life, and I love it.
But you do understand 6.5 million.
You understand that part? Okay. They're going to have to break it down, because you don't
I
have.
don't care if they break it down.
Okay.
All I'm trying to say is this board needs to make a recommendation. And if they don't do it before 5 o'clock, this meeting is over. So
Then make your recommendation of 6.3, tell them to do the breakout, and there'll be other behind-the-scenes calculations that will be done.
We have a we have a motion and a second for 65%. Is that?
Correct.
I think the motion was option A. Is that,
Option A, that's,
I mean, option A is not a,
I think
It's not accurate.
the number, it's not accurate, so my recommendation was not necessarily to pick option A, but my motion was for 65% of the tourist development tax collection budget.
Of what we can.
65%.
1 through 3, of what we can.
It's 65%. If it's a $10 million budget, then obviously it's up to $7.5 million, that's 1 through 3, because it's 75% of it.
PC got something?
So I'm just making the recommendation for 65%. The county needs to figure out how to get to the 65%. That's 1 through 3, then that was my motion.
but I guess the question would be is if we don't control if you want 65%, but you don't control the 4 cent, do you get 65% of the 4? I mean, I'm seriously asking, because because you're looking at the overall collection of all 4 cents, and then saying, we want 65 of that. And so,
And the question might be, why is it presented this way to us then?
Because it's statute. So let's do this. Let's not get caught up in this.
Right.
It's only a recommendation. It's only a budget. Actual is actual, and it's facts, and everybody's going to feel it when it comes down to actual. Make your recommendation, have it go forward. They're going to put together the details, and when it gets on that dais, they're going to have to understand the differentiation between the 4th cent, the BCC projects, what they control, what you control, and then they will make a decision. So put your best foot forward before 5 o'clock.
I'd like to make a substitute motion that we recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that they budget at least $6.5 million to Visit Pensacola and unified budget.
there is a motion that we take that, but there's also still another motion.
I have to either.
No, it's just a
I have to
substitute.
either
The substitute.
accept- I have to either accept
Do you
or.
accept it?
No, he doesn't have to accept it. We
You
just
can't
vote
do a
on the
substitute
substitute.
motion. You can't do a substitute motion without asking for permission from the person who made the motion.
Go back to Roberts.
I did. That is
Okay.
right. Madam Attorney, will you chime in, please? We'll give you that wonderful opportunity.
Something for everybody to do.
I'm here because following your last meeting, I had some procedural type questions that trickled their way to my office. So I do want to see generally what it is that we can offer to help you guys out. In this particular case, number one, I would say you need to deal with the substitute motion first. And then number two, I would say there's a bigger conversation for you guys to have about what procedural rules you want to govern your proceedings. So that's a different question, but.
What about his motion?
It would be up for
I
a vote
made a
if the secondary
substitute
motion, yeah.
All right.
If it fails, then
Right.
his motion's on the
Yep.
floor.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Reeves and a second. All right, all in favor?
Who was the second?
The
Nan.
motion is that we recommend to the county commissioners, the Board of County Commissioners, $6,500,000 for their budget for next year. All right, all in favor, and we
Sorry,
need
can you
to
just
make
give me
sure
one
that,
second
is there any discussion? All right, and we need to make sure PC and Sherry Myers vote as well. All in favor, please show a raise of hand. 1, 2. All right, the motion fails for lack of, a lack.
Majority.
Majority, thank you. Now, we have David's motion with a second, and that is to give a unified, to present to the Board of County Commissioners a unified budget where we ask for 65% of the TDT collections. Is that correct, David? Yes, ma'am. Okay. All in favor, please say a raise of hand. All right, any opposed?
So it looks like PC voted in favor.
And voted in favor. Okay?
What about Sherry?
Thank you, PC. All right, so,
What about Sherry?
is Sherry still on? I don't think so. I don't see her, do y'all?
Who's got this computer? Do you have it? Do you have?
Do you know if
have the
Sherry's
computer?
still on, Sherry Myers is still on?
Apparently not.
Right.
What was the vote?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Sorry, can we just raise the hands again just to see who voted in
Okay,
favor?
all in favor of a 65% vote, raise your hand. Those that are opposed, please raise your hand. All right, so it passes 6 to 3.
5 to 3?
1, 2, 3, 4, and PC,
5-3.
5. Oh, yeah, 5 to 3, I can't
5 to
count.
3.
Okay. All right,
How long was this meeting noticed for?
yeah, but, okay, but we still have,
We don't,
Yeah, but.
We don't notice-
Past 5.
you can't?
Not if you noticed it, from 3 to 5.
I don't think we notice it in time.
I didn't know that either. All
We're
right.
not like our meetings go to midnight sometimes, Jim.
All right. Then,
Oh, it does say 3 to 5 on the agenda?
yeah, it says 5 on the agenda. So do we call it?
We can make an emotion
Okay.
to extend though, can't we?
Yes, we can
I
make
make
a
a
motion.
motion, I'm making a motion to
Yes.
extend until the business is taken care of this committee.
All right, do
If I
I
can
hear a
get a
second? All right. Did I hear a second?
I'll second it. I
Okay.
have nowhere to go.
All right, all in favor to extend the meeting until the motion, till, for a little bit more business, please raise your hand. Those opposed? All right, opposed?
right.
Who was in favor of extending? I'm sorry.
PC, myself.
Me,
Me.
that was my
me.
motion.
Okay.
It's my motion.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. Okay, to 2. All right, 3 to 3. You said no, right? Tish?
David said no.
Oh, David said. All right, we're extending.
I don't know what the vote was. Do we have an impasse?
All right, Janice, if we can. All right, we've often asked for,
Yep, questions?
We've often asked that Janice be here to talk a little bit of bed tax expenditures. Now, I think we know more about the bed tax than we've ever known before after this meeting. But if you've got any member that's got any questions to ask Janice about, I'll be honest, I never knew the 4 cent was not ours to spend and why it wasn't ours to spend. Now I do. But if there's any other questions that we have of Janice, please, or Ms. Gilly, please bring them up.
You didn't have to extend.
No, go ahead.
So I asked Pam the question, but since Robert Turbin works for you, is 100% of his job tourism-related? If he's 100% paid by tourist development tax?
So, obviously, that's, I would say, to some extent, potentially a subjective question, right? Because you have to assume that you want to have healthy waterways, you want to have artificial reefs, you want to have, this, I think it'll be one of the largest diving reefs in the world once he's finished, relocating the Bay Bridge. He goes out there every day. Water quality. I mean, there are a lot of things that he is specifically responsible for that we take for granted every day. So when our tourists come and they get to have that enjoyment of those different water features, or like I said, turtles or things like that, he's responsible for those things. So
Is he's responsible for the
I mean,
turtles?
he's responsible for helping manage those programs and things like that. So I would say that this is a decision that was made, many years ago, I think, for the county to have these funds for him taken over by TDT. But, I think as a Floridian and how much water we have, I think having someone that actually looks over those responsibilities for the county is good for the tourism. When he made his presentation to you all, he talked about some research that had been done on terms of return on investment, whether it be charter fishermen or whether it be diving and things like that. And so I do think that he did demonstrate to some example, or to some extent, that the work that he does contribute to tourism. So.
And we also pay for the turtle searchers, right?
Pardon me?
I say we also pay for the turtle searchers.
They're part of that program. We do use a lot of volunteers. We did pay for their equipment to run up down the beach.
We did have a nest hatch last night. My understanding is there were over 90 turtles that made their way to the water.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that, boat ramps are really important. Captain Turpin oversees the boat ramps. I mean, there are a lot of things that he touches and helps manage that do make the experience better, even if, yes, for our residents, but also for the many tourists that come. So, I understand the question, but I would say from a perspective of the people that come and experience our region, I think you want to have somebody looking out for those kind of things. And he goes every day out, with the ships or the barges to deliver make sure that we are doing those reefs in the exact right place. And one day, somebody's going to have a pretty cool, fishing reef to fish off of. The charter boats, I think, will benefit from that. And we know that tourists come in town to experience that along with the divers. So, that's my answer.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
His increase in marine resources from 226 this year and to 317 on the budget that was given to us by Visit Pensacola, is that an every year increase?
No, so the part of it is that, as I mentioned, Captain Turpin has been doing this program for many years, kind of by himself. And so he is going out every day, and I forgot how many hours it is. I haven't actually ridden with him, but it is several hours from the time they leave the Bay Bridge until they go all the way out to the site where they're able to locate the reef. So we needed someone else to work with him, is my understanding. That was last year whenever the increase took place.
So the additional person working with him is the increase?
Yes, sir.
So there's also some turtle monitoring with the Island Authority having previously covered it, but with the extra expense of the submerged water lease,
There was a swap.
it was a little bit of a swap.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, Jim, I would love to talk to you about any contacts you have over in Tallahassee on how the county, when blocking off a safe swimming area, doesn't have to pay a submerged water lease for people to come enjoy the sound around the Quiet Water Pier, because it's definitely not taking away the use for that area that would typically be associated with a submerged water lease. So that is something I am also working on in Tallahassee and trying to get, again, the county out of having to pay for, again, it's just those pilings that delineate that there's no motorboats that are to be in the area around the Quiet Water Pier on the south side of the pier, so it's safe for people to swim.
Anything else, David?
So thank you, and I agree. I think it's important when tourists come here that want to come for scuba diving and fishing, and for, the locals as well. Placemaking is important, and I think we've established that, and I appreciate your words on that. And I think Robert Turpin is doing a great job with those programs. I'm just curious, is making sure that we're spending tourist development tax on tourism-related things. One of the things I know that the county spent the money, $60,000 on Vibrio testing. I would have expected that to come out of a marine resources budget, but it wasn't. It was last year. In the current year, it was a separate item.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that going to be a separate item? Because it wasn't on that sheet that was just presented to us. Is it going to be part of marine resources for next year?
No, sir. So what we did, and I remember this was way back last fall when I first got here, remember Vibrio was a really big deal. And one of the things that we had conversations about when I met with Steve Hayes and a couple of others was that let's get ahead of the Vibrio because it was decimating tourism to our east. Everybody was going home, it was a mess. And so we thought, okay, we can get ahead of it by making sure that we've done some benchmarking and some testing in our own waters, and then we can use that as a tourism, sell once we already have those benchmarks. So the idea was they would do a spring, January, February, that way you get that one, and then you would get a midsummer one. Unfortunately, due to COVID, a lot of the university and the graduate students and folks like that have not been able to do the second set of testing. So we have expended the $30,000 for the first batch of testing. The second batch of testing has not been complete yet, and so I did have a call the other day. I asked Chips to talk with the researchers at the university and let them know that to the extent that they had not done that second batch of testing, sounds like somebody's washing the dishes.
Somebody on the phone.
That we would not have them do that second batch of testing. I mean, that's part of the conversation that you all have been having about where's your skin in the game. I think that, from the commissioner and my perspective, we have tried to find places where we could help with some of that. So there is going to be one more invoice probably from the university for a graduate student that has been working on some of the previous testing results, but we aren't going to do the extra 30, totally from the original 60. We have not put that in next year's budget because as we were working through the budget, we were looking at things like that we would not continue. So short answer is it's not in next year's budget. And we haven't
Thank you.
expended all of this year's budget.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I just want to say, as a reform politician, and you are yourself as well, but when there's an issue that you put forward and it's ambiguous, what do politicians do with ambiguous issues? 65% of first 3 cents or the fourth cent. It's just like not even making a recommendation, in my opinion. But I wanted to stay till you gave your talk.
Learn to say what?
Till you gave your talk.
Thank you.
Well,
Anything, I'm happy to answer any other questions to the extent that I can.
and I'd just like to make clear that my motion that we moved was 65% of total tourist development tax collection for the budget from the 10 million budget.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Janice, I just want to tell you thank you. In 3 years I've been on this council, this is the most interaction we've had with county staff to date.
Yeah.
And we want to thank you for that and your team. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, and I would like to share with you that Amber, it's only her second week, and she's going to be extremely engaged in terms of the budget. We understand, I mean, I've been watching your meetings, I've been here, I understand your concerns, and so we are going to try and make sure that we're as transparent as we possibly can be with all of these numbers. And I did want to say, you know, I did try very hard to share with you all the things that we were doing or that the commission had asked us to do, like the mowing and things like that outside of the budget. But I will make sure that, you know, we do it in a better way next time, okay?
Very good.
So-
Thank you, Janice.
No, thank y'all.
Appreciate y'all very much. We've got Pensacola Sports, Ace. Do y'all have Ray, do you have or in an essence of time, would you forego your, okay. Is there anybody else that has anything?
What about politics of the?
The other thing in the politics,
Yeah.
there is under tab 4, I just read those. We have gone through everything with one exception, and it is a change that we need to start doing. In the past, I do not believe we have advertised the agenda. We've always advertised the meeting, but we have not advertised the agenda. And it appears that we should be advertising the agenda. That's correct. So that is something that we'll get with county staff to figure out. Do you advertise the agenda on your website, or do you advertise it somewhere? It's on the website?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you go to My Escambia and go to the meetings, our meeting would be listed, and then when the agenda comes out, it gets added as a link underneath. I think this is online agenda
Okay.
or agenda PDF or something like that. So that would be available on that.
All right.
And actually, I think it would also be appropriate to introduce Zanani, who is
Yes.
the county staff who is going to be helping us with
Yes.
that. So thank her for her work today
Absolutely.
and getting all the large
This-
document that we got out earlier today.
Well, this meeting has been Zanani's first meeting, and it's been a whopper. So, and there was a lot of material to get out, so thank you so much. And we will definitely get it out sooner next time, and we'll definitely post the agenda.